Today's episode of the GoldCast is sponsored by Cram Session. So, unfortunately, the way it worked out, I am shooting a commercial the last weekend in August. That's supposed to be when our fantasy draft is happening here in LA. And it just so happens that Lewie B, our LA co-host, who's the commissioner of our league, is gone the week before in Canada. And it just so happens that the only time we can all meet is this August 18th, which coincidentally is the birthday of my brother. So we are cramming. Yeah, we are cramming, Louis. This is a cram session. The entire league is cramming and kind of rushing into it. And there's so much happening, so much changing. We're going to be taking some flyers on it. But anyways, before we get started, you can find us on youtube.com/thegoldcast, facebook.com/thegoldcast. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, all under the same moniker, the GoldCast. You can follow us on Twitter at @_GoldCast. Lewie B, where can they find you?
Hey, well, glad to be back. You guys can find me at actually Lewie B on all platforms. Well, Twitter and Instagram, I guess. Pretty much
it. You can find me at Rudy Solis 3 on Instagram, at Rudy Solis 3RD on Twitter. All right. Lewie B and I are doing something that we've never done before. We're going to do a fantasy-centric podcast, but it's only going to be focused on the NFC West. It's going to be focused on your beloved 49ers and our rivals. We're going to literally just look at the teams that are right here in the NFC West. That's all we're going to focus on, the players that we think we have the most value. We're going to go position by position based on each team. We're going to start with the Niners and go all the way through. So sit back, enjoy this. We're really excited. We've never done this before. This is going to be a brand new style of episode the GoldCast has never done. NFC West, 49ers, and the NFC West fantasy value. But first, the greatest podcast intro in the game is about to drop right now. Your professor of fanalism is here. Your LA co-host is here. Class is in session. Let's go.
San Francisco, are you ready? This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my Los Angeles co-host,
Lewie B.
Boom. So, Lewie, hey, welcome back to the GoldCast. It's been like a freaking year, probably.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time. It's good to be back. It's good to have football back. It's good to be back. It's all around good stuff happening right now.
100%. Now, real quick, I just want to ask, how are you doing post last season? Where are you at emotionally, psychologically, as a Rams fan?
I'm finally turning a corner now, just seeing them out there on the field. It helps, but that definitely helped because I was in a very, very brutal spiral. Anytime I ever saw anything Rams or Patriots related, I would immediately have a panic attack. It's been rough. It's been a rough offseason. People kind of took it as an ability to kind of jump on us as Rams fans. Rightfully so. We scored 3 points in the Super Bowl, so people are allowed to talk their shit on us. So, but I have a good feeling, man. I think we're going to come back even stronger this year. It's because I believe in Sean McVay. So I think we have a lot of hope right now. I think if Goff can stay healthy, if Gurley can stay on the field a little bit, not as much, I think we'll be, even just having him on the field a little bit, I think will still be helpful. So
nice. Well, I'm glad you're back. We were together at the Super Bowl. We got drunk after the Super Bowl. You were a sad drunk. I was a supportive drunk.
Absolutely.
As I mentioned many times, I remember another 13-3 NFC West team losing the Super Bowl in spectacular fashion just several years ago. It's weird. It's weird how paralleled the Niners and the Rams run up was. It was really weird.
Very true. Yeah, very true.
Both second year coaches, tons of talent. stacked teams, great big defenses. I mean, the parallel between both was a trip.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to see what we can do in our third year, and if we can kind of follow in those footsteps of the Niners and Harbaugh, and keep that success going.
Absolutely. Well, we'll definitely come back later on as the season goes on, have you back on it to talk as we progress and head up to the first 49ers Rams meeting of the year, which is always an epic day for Louie and I. It's become a tradition.
It's the best.
It is. So let's go. We're gonna go fantasy value, and most people don't realize. And I say this with complete sincerity. I consider Lewie B to be a fantasy expert. He's one of the best fantasy players I know. He lives, breathes, dies fantasy in a way that I see very few people. He is almost in the championship almost every year. You're there. Every other year you're there. You are mock drafting all year round. Most people, the GoldCast Nation is probably hearing this for the first time, but I consider you a fantasy expert. So I'm really excited to do this episode with you because I think you have a lot to bring to the table. So I just wanted to get that out first.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope it works out. I hope the advice can work out with people for people.
Yeah. For better or for worse. So let's start with the 49ers. Okay, so in starting with the 49ers, we're going to go team by team. And we're just kind of sticking to the major players. You've got Jimmy G at quarterback. Running backs, we have Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon, Matt Breida. Probably Matt Breida ahead of Jerick McKinnon because he's still nursing that injury. For the wide receivers, you've got Dante Pettis, Marquise Goodwin, and then I would probably say Deebo Samuel and Jalen Hurd, the two rookies. And then, of course, at tight end, you have George Kittle, who we all know was destruction last year. So let's just start where we're just assuming we're not even going to say whether you're PPR standard. I think let's lean towards PPR because that tends to be the most popular league. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. PPR has kind of become the new standard league across a lot of platforms.
Yeah. So let's go first with our quarterback, Jimmy G. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? Where does he stand for you in a traditional PPR league?
For me, Jimmy G is kind of one of those guys that I don't think he's going to be drafted in pretty much any league, unless it's like a 2-quarterback deep league. Because obviously, I mean, he missed. We really have not seen him in this. We had the 6 games into the year, the 5 games in the year 2 years ago, where he was pretty good. He didn't throw a lot of touchdowns. He threw a lot of yards. And then last year, obviously, only got 2-3 games out of him. He put up, I'm looking at stat line, he put up 5 touchdowns and 3 picks in that time. So he just hasn't shown. I think he's going to be a good quarterback for the team. He's just not someone that I would be targeting at all. He's going to be on waiver wire, and he's going to be on waivers. And if he comes out and has a strong opening, I think there's going to be a lot of people throwing a lot of fab down for him, or if they're a waiver priority, whatever it is.
I agree with you. I would suggest not drafting Jimmy G. I believe I put him in the wait and see category 100%. My dad ridiculously, foolishly drafted him first last year. I think we talked about this. It was insane. It was insane. It was one of the most insane first draft picks I've ever seen. So let's move on to running back because Here we've got Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida, and the ever off-injured Jerick McKinnon. And of the 3, I will say this, and I want to hear your thoughts. Of the 3, I feel like the running back with the most potential, the highest ceiling, is Tevin Coleman. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, sorry, I want to jump on there. Yeah, 100%. I love Tevin Coleman this year. His value is insane. He's being drafted in mocks. He's being drafted at the 8th, 9th round. And also just a disclaimer for the people listening, our league is a 10-team PPR league and 6 point per quarterback touchdown for passing touchdowns. So that I'm looking at it through the lens of that, because if you're in a 12 team, he's going earlier, but through the lens of a 10-team league, he's going the 8th or 9th round. And I just think that's insane because he's the starting running back for Kyle Shanahan, who always has that position always has value. If you look back at all his years in Washington and his years in Atlanta with Tevin Coleman, which is great. And then out here last year, Matt Breida was unbelievable on a pardon my French, a pretty bad offense. And so he was still great. And so I think Tevin Coleman's has a lot of upside, especially where you're getting him. You're drafting him as a bench player, and he could be your RB2 for half the year, most of the year potentially. So I think he's great. And then obviously Matt Breida is going really late, sometimes undrafted. I think he's a really good target to do in the later rounds for sure, because he'll still get work.
He is definitely still going to get work, and I'm with you. Tevin Coleman, the upside of Tevin Coleman is exciting. I would say offensively, without question, the biggest pickup that the 49ers got last year in terms of actual football. And for fantasy, these two, Shanahan and Coleman, have already had success together from a fantasy standpoint and from a real-life standpoint, and I'm with you. He is probably the player outside of George Kittle that I'm most excited for, just to see what he can do.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I'm same here, man.
So let's go to the wide receivers. You've got Dante Pettis, Marquise Goodwin, and then Trent Taylor. He's got the broken foot. I really don't. I think right now you kind of have to scrap him off the book. Sorry, Trent Taylor. And then you have the rookie combo of Deebo Samuel and Jalen Hurd. Where are you? I'll tell you. I'm going to start first. Marquise Goodwin, my frustration with Goodwin is that he's very streaky, and he's one of these players that you've really got to understand the matchup with him to really gain fantasy value for him. So as far as drafting a player like Marquise Goodwin, I'm not sure. Marquise Goodwin to me feels like a waiver wire pickup. He's a guy that you pick up for 1 or 2 games that you know he's going to have a solid matchup on, and you dump him back as soon as you're done. Dante Pettis, I need to see more, and same with the rooks. I need to see more. So where do you stand on those 4 players?
That's honestly kind of where I'm at. That's a pretty it's a good way to wrap it up, in my opinion. I think that's just the way to look at these receivers. Dante Pettis is obviously the number 1, and his draft stock has been actually the last week has kind of been teetering off a little bit, because reports from camp have not been amazing, because he was coming out over offseason and people were like, this guy's going to blow up, and Shanahan loves him and Jimmy G loves him. And then the last couple weeks of camp, he's just really not impressing. And that's kind of been the word that's coming out more and more. So I'm kind of hesitating on Dante Pettis in drafts right now. I mean, if he's there in, real late, the 8th or 9th, I would take a shot on him. But he's kind of 7th round. And for me, I just kind of look at other guys that are a little more valuable at that round, like a Will Fuller or something, because he's just unproven. Dante Pettis he's talented. He's a very talented receiver on paper, but he's just, he hasn't done it yet. So
I'm with you on this one. My frustration with Dante Pettis is I constantly hear, just like you said, how talented he is, but I haven't seen it on the field.
Yeah. I mean, we saw it was very, 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 super small sample size last season, and that's kind of all we had. And then that was as a rookie. That also wasn't with Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's what people need to remember, is that he still hasn't really played a whole year with Jimmy G, so we don't know what that's going to look like yet. So there's definitely some risk to him for sure.
Absolutely. And now let's go to the man. This guy, my God, George Kittle, unbelievable season last year. Just talk about fantasy value. This guy was destruction. He was absolute destruction last year. I had the pleasure of having him, and he was fantastic. Let's talk about George Kittle. I would say, without question, the player with the most fantasy value on the 49ers.
Yeah, no question at all. And it shows in his draft price. I mean, he's going in the 2nd, 3rd round in some drafts. So it's he holds the most, and rightfully so. He should go that high. He's such a talented tight end, dude. He's amazing. And I think he's going to have another good year. I hope that it works out with Jimmy G, because obviously he didn't get a lot of time with him. And I hope that they can kind of develop a good relationship down the road. Because oh my God, you guys should be so thrilled.
Yeah, definitely. And that's crazy. I've seen that too. He's going in the 2nd and 3rd round in drafts right now. That is crazy high. That's you're basically essentially slotting him into the position of your second, your RB2 or your wide receiver 1.
Which is crazy to me. I'm not a big. I don't draft tight ends early. I like to stock up on running backs and receivers, and yeah, that's just the only. That's the only risk in taking a guy that early. He's incredible, and he could have another amazing year. I think he will, but yeah, you're missing out on an RB2 or a wide receiver 1 or 2. Like, it's risky. It's definitely risky.
Yeah, I would say for the people, I would definitely wait until you have at least your starters, your wide receiver and running back starters. I would have 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs before I would even think about going George Kittle at tight end.
Absolutely, yeah, no, for sure, and that's the part that you have to understand. Like, you just kind of have to pick, because like you're not going to be able to get him after the 3rd round, like at the latest. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, you just got to pick. And yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I really wouldn't. You got to get running back and receiver. Running back especially is so critical in fantasy. You got to have your running backs. And if you pass up 1 or 2 for Kittle, it's like, I don't know.
I look at you and I go, I'm taking your money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no doubt.
All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams. So, man, your team last year, from a fantasy standpoint, was insane. Unreal. You had three legitimate cases, 3 wide receiver 1s, and then you had the best running back in the entire league. But you have Todd Gurley at running back, but you had Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp, our boy Cooper Kupp. Before he went down, which was a shame. It was a goddamn shame. But all 3 of those guys, I mean, Sean McVay's ability to... Sean McVay, the one thing that I love about Sean McVay is he understands fantasy. And he sits there every week and he game plans and he goes, what can I do for Louie and Rudy and all the fantasy players out there to make sure that they're getting maximum value from my guys? And I can tell that he sits and does this every game because, boy.
For sure.
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
There's the actual game planning, and then he does his fantasy game planning. But those 3 guys, I remember you, me, and another one of our players there had someone else. I had Brandon Cooks, you had Kupp, and another guy had Robert Woods, and all 3 of those guys were wide receiver 1s in each of our teams. It was insane the amount of fantasy value those guys had.
Oh, it's incredible, man. This offense, and I just don't see a reason why that wouldn't be the case again this year. Literally, like Cooper Kupp, everything points to he's going to play week 1, which is crazy because he went down in like October. I think he went down in November with the ACL, but he said he's fired up. He said he's on the field. They in the joint practice, he got hit and he popped up, felt great. Like, he's playing full. He's going to play week 1. It's like, man, if he can just come back out and pick up where he left off, because as soon as he left, this offense kind of changed. And you could see Goff kind of changed. If Goff gets all 3 of those guys for an entire season, I don't see how. And that's a good segue because we're going to start with Jared Goff. I don't see how Jared Goff's going almost undrafted in some leagues, and I want every piece of him I can get, man. I just don't see, like, barring an injury to either him or like one of the receivers again for the season, I don't know how he's not going to be a QB1, man. Like, he finished his QB7 last year. And that was with that horrible finish that he had, from weeks like 13 to 17. That was with that. And he's been so good. Personally, if you wait on quarterback, I think Goff is like the main guy to target because you can get him in the 11th, 12th, 13th round sometimes. And it's like, that's crazy value. It is
crazy value. I got him, I believe, in the 9th round last year, I think is when I got Goff. I got Goff really late.
You got him super late.
Yeah, it was super late. I got him in the 9th round. Obviously, weeks 1 through 8, he balled the fuck out. Pardon my French, but he did. He really did. And man, that game against Minnesota was bananas.
The game against KC. I mean, my God, dude.
Yeah, he really did. In terms of fantasy, man, he just lit up the stat board. And we've talked about this offline, I think there's a real legitimate fear that I'm not going to say that he regresses, but that he doesn't improve beyond what he is, and that he becomes much easier to read from a defensive standpoint. And I think that's where the fear is from here, from a real life perspective, and obviously that affects his fantasy value.
That makes sense, yeah, and I can see why people would be hesitating on him because in fear of that, that he's going to regress or whatever. It just depends if you're buying in or not. I buy into he's going to continue to improve just because of McVay alone, and also I think Goff is. I'm biased, but I believe in him. I've really liked him. I liked him when we got him, and I think he's a great quarterback. I think he's going to improve because he's improved every year he's played. So I kind of look at that and I go, well, I think that, but again, maybe people would argue that last season was a ceiling. So I understand the hesitancy with people.
All right, so let's move on. Let's move on to your boy, Todd Gurley. Now, obviously, there's a lot of questions around his health. And will he be – obviously, he's going to carry the load. But does he still have the fantasy impact that he did last year, especially with, we've got Christian McCaffrey coming up, Kamara's super solid in there, Saquon Barkley. Where does Gurley stand for you, in your opinion? Where does he stand amongst the other major running backs after having such a huge year last year? Does he still have the same fantasy value this year?
Man, it's tricky, man. He's super polarizing this year because of that knee. Because the problem with that injury is he literally can, at any point, he could be fine, and then at one point he could just miss 3 games because his knee swells up because it's arthritis. So there's no way to know. So personally, just hearing what people are saying coming out of camp, hearing how McVay is talking about him, hearing how everyone's all the beat reporters are talking about him. It seems like what's going to happen is he's going to get a reduced workload, but he's going to get more of a workload in the vein of like an Alvin Kamara, where he's getting, 200 carries and, maybe probably on the same amount of targets and receptions, but he'll get about 50 to 60 carries less, I'm assuming. And that's what it sounds like. But honestly, I think that in the McVay offense, I don't know why that wouldn't be great. If he drops down to 900 rushing yards instead of 1,200, I know that's a huge jump. But if you take a couple touchdowns, he's still going to score a bunch of touchdowns. This offense is still going to be really good. He'll still get targeted. You're just not – he's not going to – I think he's no longer going to be – at least this season, he won't be the guy he was the last 2 years where he was like single-handedly winning you weeks. I don't think he'll do that anymore. But I still think he'll finish as an RB1, like top 10, top 12. I really do. I think he will.
Where do you still see him going in the first round?
A lot of drafts, he's fluctuating, man. I've been in drafts where he didn't go into like the middle of the second, and then I've drafted where he's going at the back of the first, middle of the first. Personally, and I don't know if I've told you this yet, Rudy, GoldCast can be the first to hear this as well, that I'm telling you. I pick at 7 in our draft coming up, and I'm going to take Gurley there at 7 if David Johnson or someone doesn't fall. I'm going to take Gurley at 7 because I don't trust that he falls around that loop, and I trust him this year to be a top 10 running back, and I just want him, man. And it's a risky move, dude, but I'm set on I'm taking him at 7.
I'll be honest. I honestly, I think getting Gurley, one of the number 1 running backs at 7, is pretty good. It's pretty good.
For sure.
It's less riskier than taking David Johnson, who we're going to talk about in a minute here. But I think it's less riskier than that move. I think that's a far riskier move.
Really, yeah. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, they definitely both carry their own. I mean, outside of the top 3 now, because Zeke, we don't know what's going on with Zeke. So outside of the top 3 backs, I mean, you're looking at, Bell's on a new team, DJ's with a new quarterback, a new offense, and Gurley's got the knee. It's a crazy landscape after those first 3 running backs, man.
It really is. It really is. There's question marks around all of them, and with us drafting so early, those question marks are only bigger, not smaller.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. So let's go to your wide receivers. Who do you think has the most value between Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp? I want to say Cooper Kupp, but of course the injury makes me nervous. It's such a fast turnaround. We're not even at a year. I know he's really young. I really enjoyed Brandon. I had Cooks in our league, and I had Kupp in my family's league, in the Solis league. And Brandon Cooks, far less catches far less workload than Cooper Kupp, but every catch was for like 45 yards, and so it didn't matter. I could have 4 catches on the day and have almost as many points as Kupp, sometimes even more, and because he just like every catch was for 45 yards. Robert Woods is kind of the guy that was in the middle. A little bit more of a, not quite the workhorse that Kupp was, and obviously not the distance runner that Brandon Cooks was. Where do these 3 guys line up for you fantasy wise? Who are you going? If you had your choice of the 3, who would you go and in what order?
Man, all right. So this has been a tough thing for me. I'm curious to hear your order too after this, but I personally, I would probably go Woods, Kupp, Cooks. Those are my 3 that I'd go in. It doesn't mean that I don't love Cooks. I'm looking at the Cooks that went 80 for 1204 last year. Like 1,200 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns on 80 receptions. That's amazing. But like you said, he does it in spurts. So there are a few games here and there where he'll catch 2 for 67, which is kind of cool, but it's like that doesn't really help your team. Whereas Robert Woods, he had a little bit more receiving yards. He was 86 for 1219. So I think he's definitely the more pound for pound. I would take Woods over Cooks. But yeah, if Kupp can come back from this injury, I think he would probably overtake Woods as the one in that offense, statistically speaking. But yeah, for me, it'd be Woods, Kupp, Cooks. I'm curious to hear your 3 as well on that.
Okay, this is funny. This is kind of like my girly moment. I personally, I would go for Kupp again. He is just like you with Todd Gurley. I've had him 2 years in a row. He's the one player on your team that I actually like, and he is so, if he can get back to his health, I would go for Kupp. I'm a strong believer in Kupp. I really am.
Which is fair.
Yeah, I really am. I would go Kupp, Cooks, Woods. That would be my selection. And I know what you're saying though, because even on mock drafting, Woods is coming up higher and is ranked higher than Kupp, understandably so. But I just think he's falling into the later rounds, and I think that is such a great value pickup somewhere in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, 8th round. That's a great pickup. If Kupp is sitting there, between 6 and 8, I'm probably going to grab him.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I don't think if he got it, if he fell past the 5th, man, I would be like ecstatic, because the 5th I think is my cutoff where I would take him, because I would probably take Woods or Cooks ahead of him at 5. If he's there at God, if he could fall to 6, man, or 7, like you're saying, yeah, that would be unbelievable. That would be amazing. It'd be you and me in a race for Kupp at 6, I'm assuming.
Yeah, as it was last year.
As it was last year. Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So let's move on to the worst team in the league, the Seattle Seahawks, the most hated team in America. You've got the Patriots and the Seahawks. We're going to breeze through these last 2 because there's just not a lot of value on these 2 teams, in my opinion. Seattle Seahawks, the major players you've got Russell Wilson at quarterback, Chris Carson at running back, Rashad Penny at running back, and at wide receiver you have Tyler Lockett and, of course, the rookie DK Metcalf. Russell Wilson, obviously in a PPR league like ours, brings a tremendous amount of fantasy value. Do you still think he's able to maintain that high position? And where do you put him as far as QBs? Is he in the top 5? Is he in the top 10? Where do you see his fantasy value?
For some reason, I'm just kind of staying away from Russell Wilson this year, and he's going. God, dude, his value his stock has dropped like really hard. He's now, I've done some mocks where he's in the 9th, 10th, 11th round, and I'm like, that's crazy, because I've seen him multiple times now, because at first it's like, it's an automated thing, it can be a fluke, but it's happening more and more and more. I'm like, geez, people are really off of him. And I understand it, because for me, I'm kind of off him because like last year he just had such an unbelievable pace for touchdowns. Like his completion, his touchdown per attempt rate was like the highest of his career, bar none, like by a lot. And so you just have to assume that's gonna come back down to earth, especially with the wide receiver core the way it is. Like I don't see any of these receivers being that good. I think they're gonna run. I mean, Tyler Lockett's great, but like, he's only really flashed last year. He flashed a lot before, but he never put it together. DK's a rookie. They're gonna run the ball a lot, and I just don't see. He'll have rushing value, I think, but I just don't. And again, how can you count Russell Wilson out? Like he's done nothing in his career to prove that he's not going to be not a top 10 quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to always be a top 10 fantasy quarterback, and that's what he's proved. But yeah, if there's any year I would maybe kind of count him out, it would probably be this year.
Yeah. Now let's move on to our running backs here. We've got Chris Carson and Rashad Penny. I had Rashad Penny. I might have had, I don't know. I think you had Chris Carson last year. I had Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny showed flashes. I still think your best fantasy value there's got to be Chris Carson.
Oh, dude, I've been in love with Carson this year, man. I love. Yeah, I had him last year. He was unbelievable for me. He was like my running back 3 or 4 on my depth chart, and he was unbelievable for me. He was in my lineup every week, and I just don't see why he's not going to do that again this year, barring health, because like the dude is a beast. They love him. They want to work it more into the passing game. They got rid of their other running back, Mike Davis. So now a bunch of carries and targets are open for grabbing. And yeah, I like Rashad Penny. I think especially he's a good value play. Like, you can get him in the 9th, 10th round, and that's awesome. But you can get Chris Carson in like round 5 or 6, and he's a starting running back for a team that ran the ball the most last year. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, that's a huge guy to have on your team. So I love Chris Carson. I love both of them. But if you wanted to wait and take Penny later, I couldn't blame you on that. I think he's gonna have a good year this year.
Yeah, and I would say, jumping over to the wide receivers, I just want to touch on one of them, DK Metcalf. I put DK Metcalf in the Deebo Samuel, Jalen Hurd category. What do you think?
Agreed. Yeah, rookie receivers, man, like, are not as good as people kind of think. They don't have as good as time as people think they do, because like the Odell Beckham year kind of threw everyone off. But rookie receivers, especially in this offense, an offense that's not going to that's not going to throw the ball a lot. I just don't know why you would take him. Maybe pick him up off waivers a couple weeks in to see, but I'm in the same boat as you. He's not anyone that I'm going to be willing to draft.
All right, so let's move on to the butthole of the NFC West, the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh my God.
There's only 4 players of any fantasy value here. You've got the rookie quarterback Kyler Murray, running back David Johnson, and your wide receivers Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk. Let's start with Kyler Murray. First of all, I'm not drafting this guy. I think
fair. That's fair.
You're right. I'm just gonna drop that first. In fact, if you are listening to this and you plan on drafting him, we have a spot for you in our league. We would love for you to join the league.
Oh goodness, we'll make an opening. We'll make an opening
for you. I'm not. He's one of these guys that maybe by week 8 he's like who was the? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm running a blank. Was it Josh Rosen? Was it Josh Rosen last year?
Josh Allen. Josh
Allen.
Do you mean like that's gonna pick up?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Josh Allen.
Josh Allen. That just started killing it on fantasy, killing it.
Yes. Which is why I could understand the Kyler Murray hype, because I do see him as like a Josh Rosen-esque, because like his running ability is insane. The dude's so fast, but he's just so small. Like I think if he gets rocked a couple times in the pocket, I'm just like I don't know how well he's gonna hold up. We'll see. I think he's a good quarterback. But yeah, a rookie in a new offense and a system that hasn't even been NFL tested yet. It's risky. There's much more quarterbacks that are available that you can just take that are way less risky, and you'll still get maybe a little bit less points or the same amount, and it's worth it in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk about the main player from this team. Is this year the return of David Johnson? It feels like everyone's really hyped on him. He's moved really high up on the fantasy draft boards in terms of ranking. Do you see David Johnson making a return to form?
I do. I think so, because like you look at him last year and he was on like the worst offense, like historically the worst offense ever, basically. And he was still a running back 12. I look at that and I'm like, man, like his talent is just so good. And if he stays on the field, I think he'll pay off his draft price for sure. I think in this offense, they're going to feed him the ball through throwing him and running it. He's going to get so many touches a game. So I think he returns, but I understand people's hesitance on him if they don't want to take him at 5, 6 in the first round.
So let me ask you this. Does having this back-to-back rookie quarterbacks, having another rookie quarterback, does this affect the fantasy value of Larry Fitzgerald?
Yes, I think it has to. Like, I just think it has to, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he was all right last year. He was a very middle-tier kind of receiver, and which is kind of where he's at in his career now, understandably. But, yeah, man, I don't know. A brand new offense, a new rookie quarterback who I think is a lot better than Josh Rosen. But, yeah, I think it will affect him. I don't think he's going later, rightfully so. I think he's a decent value if you need just like a filler, if you need some more depth at the receiver position. But he's not someone that I don't think he's someone you need to have when you're.
Yeah, he's kind of like Frank Gore. I feel like he is consistent and, over the course of the entire year puts up, decent fantasy numbers, but his week-to-week, game-to-game contributions are not really there in the way they used to be when he was young.
That's a great comp. Yeah, that's a great comp to say. He's very much like a Frank Gore-esque type of player now.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so now we talked about this a little bit before. Let's drop it to the GoldCast Nation. Our top 3 fantasy value players. Let the GoldCast Nation know who we decided are the best 3 players available in the NFC West.
So for us, the ones we decided on, and this is in no particular order, I'll start with him because this is the GoldCast. I think it's got to go George Kittle. I think it's got to go Todd Gurley. I think it's got to go David Johnson. And that could get some flack because Todd Gurley, I understand, having the top 3. I get it. I know. He's got knee arthritis. I know, but you still got to respect him, man. You still got to put him up there. So I think those are the top 3 guys. I think those are the guys that everyone is already targeting. But I think, I think targeting any of those guys, you're gonna have a good first couple of rounds.
I agree too. And it wouldn't be a Louis centric episode without a little bit of LA Rams homerism. You know what I mean? This is par for the course.
They've come to accept it from me, I'm assuming, right?
Absolutely. They've come to accept it. Absolutely. Well, Louis, I really look forward to this Sunday and our fantasy draft. Thank you so much for coming on, man. That was great.
Thank you, man. Yeah, thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man. It's always good to be on here, man. Thanks to GoldCast for hearing me out.
Absolutely. And we definitely got to do a couple more check-ins. Last year was probably our lowest Louis guest star appearances. We got to change that.
We got to move it up. We got to bump the numbers up for sure.
Especially if the Niners can stay competitive, then I think
doubt.
It really starts to become something you and I need to get on and talk about.
Agreed. I hope they do, man. I really do. I like to see. I want to see some competitive Niners-Rams games, man.
Me too.
Yeah.
All right, bud. Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. And so concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my Los Angeles co-host,
Lewie B.
We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.
This is the GoldCast.